My beloved child, listen closely, because what you are about to hear is not ordinary, not accidental, and not something that comes to everyone. There was a moment in your life when someone walked away and left you carrying questions that never found answers. They left you holding memories that felt heavier at night. They left you wondering if you were ever enough. You tried to move on, but the silence they left behind kept speaking louder than words. What you never saw was what happened after they left. While you were healing in quiet ways, they were breaking in ways they never admitted. While you were learning to breathe again, they were replaying your voice in their head. While you thought you were forgotten, your absence became the loudest presence in their life. This message begins here because the truth is this. The one who left you heartbroken has been carrying something they never thought they would have to face. They did not expect this moment to come. They did not expect to feel this pull again. They did not expect to realize that walking away from you was not freedom, but loss. And now, when they least expected it, a realization has arrived that has changed the way they see you, the way they see themselves, and the way they see the past that still connects you both. A quiet shift has taken place, and it did not happen overnight. It happened slowly, in moments they never planned for. It happened when they heard your name in a place they did not expect. It happened when they saw someone who looked like you from behind and felt their heart skip for a second. It happened when life did not turn out the way they imagined it would without you. They once believed leaving was the strong choice. They once believed silence would make everything easier. They once believed you would fade with time. But instead, time did something else. Time stripped away their excuses. Time exposed the emptiness they tried to ignore. Time showed them the difference between distraction and connection. They began to understand something painful. What they had with you was not replaceable. What you gave was not common. What you represented was not something they could find again by simply moving on. This realization did not come gently. It arrived with regret, with self-reflection, and with a truth they avoided for too long. They finally saw that you were not asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person at the wrong time. And now, with clarity they never had before, they are standing at the edge of a message they never thought they would send. There is something deeply surprising about what they want to say to you now. It is not an apology the way you might expect. It is not a simple explanation. It is not a casual check-in. It is something heavier. It is something honest. They want you to know that the pain you felt did not go unnoticed, even if it seemed that way. They want you to know that the silence you received was not because you did not matter, but because they were running from their own fear. They want you to know that walking away from you became the moment they started questioning themselves. They measured others against you. They compared conversations to yours. They noticed how rare it was to feel seen the way you saw them. And this is the part they never said out loud. Losing you changed them. It reshaped the way they understand connection. It forced them to confront parts of themselves they avoided when they were with you. They now see that you were not the source of their discomfort. You were the mirror that showed them what they were not ready to become at that time. What makes this message once in a lifetime is not just what they feel, but the timing of it. They are reaching this realization at a point when you have grown stronger than the version of you they left. You are no longer standing in the same place emotionally. You are no longer waiting for validation. You are no longer asking why you were not chosen. And that is what shocks them the most. They sense that you are different now. They feel that you are no longer available in the way you once were. They realize that if they speak now, it may be too late. And yet, the urge to speak is stronger than the fear of being ignored. This message is coming from a place they never thought they would reach. A place of humility. A place of honesty. A place where excuses no longer work. They want to tell you that what they felt for you did not disappear. It went underground. It stayed unspoken. It stayed unresolved. And now it is asking to be acknowledged, even if the outcome is uncertain. This is where your power quietly enters the story. You do not need to respond. You do not need to explain. You do not need to reopen wounds. The surprising part of this message is not what they want from you. It is what they want you to know. They want you to know that you were never invisible. You were never replaceable. You were never easy to forget. You were the lesson they learned too late. And whether this message leads to a conversation or simply closes a chapter, one thing is already certain. The truth has finally caught up with them. And you, standing where you are now, get to decide what this truth means for you. My beloved child, there is a deeper layer to this message that you have not yet seen, and it matters more than the surface words ever could. When this person finally decided to face the truth, it did not come from courage alone. It came from exhaustion. They grew tired of pretending that everything was fine. They grew tired of convincing themselves that leaving you was the right choice. They grew tired of carrying a version of the story that no longer felt true. In quiet moments, when no one was watching and no distractions were left to hide behind, your presence returned to them in ways they could not control. They remembered the way you listened without interrupting. They remembered how you noticed the smallest changes in their mood. They remembered how safe it felt to be understood without having to explain everything. And this is the part they never admitted before. They did not leave because they stopped caring. They left because they were afraid of how deeply you mattered. They were afraid of responsibility. They were afraid of becoming someone they were not yet ready to be. And now, standing on the other side of time, they finally understand that what scared them was not you, but the version of themselves that loving you required. As days passed, something unexpected began to happen inside them. They started seeing patterns they could no longer ignore. Every connection after you felt rushed. Every laugh felt temporary. Every promise felt fragile. They realized they had mistaken intensity for depth and attention for love. With you, things were different. With you, there was substance. With you, there was patience. With you, there was a future they were too immature to protect at that time. This realization did not bring peace. It brought regret. Not the loud kind that demands forgiveness, but the quiet kind that sits heavy in the chest and whispers at night. They began asking themselves questions they avoided for a long time. Why did they run when things became real? Why did they choose distance instead of growth? Why did they break something rare instead of learning how to hold it? And slowly, painfully, the answer became clear. They did not lose you because of a mistake. They lost you because they refused to grow when growth was required. That truth changed the way they see the past. It changed the way they see you. And most of all, it changed the way they see themselves. There is a sentence forming in their mind that they have rehearsed more times than you would ever imagine. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is simple, and that is why it carries so much weight. They want to tell you that you were right all along. Right about what you needed. Right about what you deserved. Right about the effort you asked for. They want to tell you that the standards you held were not unreasonable. They were necessary. They want to tell you that your patience was a gift they did not know how to receive. And here is the shocking part. They are no longer reaching out to take something back. They are reaching out because they finally understand what they lost. This message is not driven by loneliness. It is driven by awareness. They have reached a point where denial no longer protects them. Where blaming circumstances no longer works. Where pretending they were the victim no longer feels convincing. They are owning their part, fully and without defense. And whether or not you ever respond, this ownership is something they needed to face for their own growth. At the same time, they are aware of something that scares them deeply. They sense that you are no longer standing in the same emotional place you once were. They feel that your energy has shifted. They notice that you no longer chase clarity. You no longer seek closure from outside yourself. You have become grounded in a way that did not exist before. And that is why this message feels urgent to them. Not because they expect a second chance, but because they know this window may never open again. They know that once someone like you truly moves on, you do not circle back out of confusion. You move forward with intention. They are aware that your silence now comes from strength, not hurt. And that realization has humbled them more than anything else. They are finally seeing you clearly, not through fear, not through ego, but through respect. They understand that if they speak now, it must be with honesty, without expectations, and without demands. This is not about rewriting the past. It is about acknowledging the truth of it. This part of the story is not about reunion. It is about recognition. Recognition of who you were then. Recognition of who you are now. Recognition of the role you played in their growth, even in your absence. The surprising message they carry is this. You changed them, even though you were the one who got hurt. You became the lesson that reshaped their understanding of love, commitment, and emotional responsibility. And while they cannot undo what happened, they finally see the value of what they had. This message exists whether or not it is ever spoken out loud. It exists in the way they think now. It exists in the way they choose differently now. And as this truth settles in, one thing becomes undeniable. You were not a chapter they could simply close. You were a turning point. My beloved child, what they are realizing now goes even deeper, and this is the part that changes everything. They are finally understanding that the pain you carried did not come from love alone, but from imbalance. You gave more clarity than confusion. You offered presence instead of excuses. You showed consistency where they offered uncertainty. At the time, they mistook your steadiness for something ordinary. They thought reliability would always be available. They assumed your patience had no limit. Only now do they see how rare it was to be met with honesty instead of games. They recognize that you did not try to control them. You tried to build with them. And this truth has forced them to confront something uncomfortable. They benefited from your emotional maturity without earning it. They leaned on your strength while avoiding their own responsibility. And when things demanded depth, they chose distance. This realization has not been easy for them. It has cracked open a version of themselves they worked hard to protect. But it is also the reason this message carries weight. Because it is coming from someone who can no longer lie to themselves. They have begun to notice how your absence changed the way the world responds to them. Conversations feel shallower now. Connections feel transactional. They are surrounded by people, yet feel unseen. And in those moments, they remember how you used to look at them when they spoke. They remember how you noticed the meaning behind their words. They remember how you created space for them to be real without fear of judgment. This is when the regret becomes sharp. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just sharp enough to remind them that what they lost was not comfort, but understanding. They are now aware that love without emotional safety is fragile. They are aware that attraction without trust fades quickly. And they are aware that the kind of bond you offered cannot be recreated through effort alone. It requires readiness. It requires accountability. It requires growth. All the things they resisted before. And this awareness has brought them to a humbling conclusion. You were not asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. And they were not capable of offering it at the time. There is something else they want you to know, even if they never say it directly. They see now that you stayed longer than you should have. You tried harder than you needed to. You explained yourself more than was fair. You held on, hoping clarity would arrive if you were patient enough. And this realization carries guilt. Not because you made them feel bad, but because they now understand the cost of your silence after they left. They see how you withdrew to protect yourself. They see how you rebuilt quietly. They see how you chose dignity over chaos. And this is the part that surprises them most. You did not chase them after they walked away. You did not beg for answers. You chose yourself. That choice shifted the balance of the story. It turned you from someone waiting to someone evolving. And they know something important because of it. If they speak to you now, it will not be to reclaim power. It will be to acknowledge that you took it back when you chose to heal. What they are carrying toward you now is not entitlement. It is respect. Respect for your growth. Respect for your boundaries. Respect for the version of you that survived what they could not handle. They understand that this message may not lead anywhere. They understand that your life may be full, steady, and no longer open to revisiting the past. And yet, they feel compelled to speak because some truths demand recognition, even when there is nothing to gain. They want you to know that the way you loved them reshaped their understanding of what love should feel like. They want you to know that your absence taught them lessons your presence could not. They want you to know that losing you became the moment they stopped running from emotional responsibility. This message is not about reopening wounds. It is about honoring what was real. It is about giving credit where it was never given before. And here is where the power fully rests with you. You do not owe them a response. You do not owe them closure. You do not owe them reassurance. The most shocking part of this entire story is this. You became whole without the answers you once needed. You found peace without their explanation. You grew into someone who no longer requires validation from the past. And that is why this message feels so heavy to them now. Because they see that you did not break when they left. You transformed. And whether their words ever reach you or remain unspoken, one truth stands unshaken. You were never the one who lost. You were the one who outgrew the pain. My beloved child, there is a moment approaching that they cannot escape, and it is the moment when words stop being rehearsed and truth demands to be felt. They are realizing that this message is not about fixing the past, because the past has already done its work. It shaped you. It humbled them. It revealed what mattered when everything else fell away. They now understand that some connections do not come back, not because they were weak, but because they were powerful enough to complete their purpose. You were not meant to stay in their life forever in the way they imagined back then. You were meant to awaken something they could not see while you were standing beside them. This understanding has brought a strange mix of peace and sorrow into their heart. Peace, because they finally see the truth. Sorrow, because clarity arrived after consequence. And this is where the message becomes surprising. They are no longer asking the universe for another chance with you. They are asking for the courage to accept what they lost without bitterness. That alone tells you how much has changed within them. As they reflect, they are forced to admit something that once felt impossible to say. You were the standard they now measure everything against. Not because you were flawless, but because you were genuine. You did not pretend. You did not perform. You showed up as you were, even when it felt risky. They see now that what made them uncomfortable was your emotional honesty. You required presence, not potential. You valued consistency over promises. You asked for alignment, not perfection. At the time, they labeled this as pressure. Now they recognize it as maturity. And this realization has quietly altered the way they move through relationships today. They listen more. They avoid less. They pause before walking away. Not because they expect to find you again in someone else, but because you taught them what depth feels like. And once depth is known, shallow connections can never fully satisfy. There is another truth forming beneath the surface of this message, and it is one they carry carefully. They see that you are no longer defined by what happened. You are not introducing yourself through pain anymore. You are not explaining your worth to people who cannot hold it. You have become selective, calm, and rooted. And this is where admiration replaces regret. They admire the way you rebuilt without becoming hardened. They admire the way you chose self-respect without losing your softness. They admire the way you let go without becoming bitter. This is the version of you they never got to know fully, and that realization stings quietly. Not with jealousy, but with acceptance. They understand that some people are meant to witness your becoming from a distance. And they are beginning to accept that this may be their role now. What makes this message once in a lifetime is not the chance of reconnection, but the honesty behind it. They are no longer trying to rewrite the ending. They are acknowledging the meaning of the story. They want you to know that the love you offered did not disappear into nothing. It became a reference point. It became a lesson. It became a mirror. They want you to know that even though they left you with questions, you left them with awareness. Even though you were hurt, you became the reason they matured. And even though silence followed, the impact never faded. This message is not meant to pull you back. It is meant to honor what existed without asking you to return to it. And that distinction changes everything. Now, as this chapter reaches its quiet close, something important settles into place. You are no longer waiting for this message, yet it arrives anyway. Not to disturb your peace, but to confirm it. To remind you that your worth was never tied to someone staying. It was revealed by how you rose when they left. The one who walked away heartbroken now carries a truth they cannot undo. You mattered more than they understood at the time. You changed them in ways they will carry forward. And you, standing firmly in who you have become, do not need to respond to be validated. The story has already done its work. And you have already won by becoming whole. My beloved child, there is a final layer to this message that completes the transformation you have already lived through. What they understand now is not about romance, return, or repair. It is about consequence and meaning. They see that when they walked away, they did not just leave a relationship. They stepped away from a version of themselves that could have grown sooner. And while time moved forward for both of you, it did not move in the same way. You used it to heal, to refine, to rise. They used it to distract, to avoid, to repeat cycles until awareness finally caught up. This difference is what makes the message feel heavy in their chest now. Because they are finally standing in the place you once stood alone. Reflective. Accountable. Awake. And they know something with certainty. Growth delayed is growth demanded later, and the cost is always higher. You paid yours early. They are paying theirs now. They also see that you never needed them to return for your story to make sense. Your healing did not depend on their apology. Your peace did not wait for their clarity. You learned to release without explanation. You learned to trust yourself again. You learned that love does not beg to be chosen. And this realization has quietly changed the way they see power. They once believed power was leaving first. Now they understand that power was staying true to yourself even when it hurt. They see that you did not close your heart. You strengthened it. You did not become cold. You became clear. And clarity, once gained, does not ask for permission. It simply moves forward. This is why the message feels final, even if no words are exchanged. Because the lesson has already landed where it needed to. There is something deeply humbling they carry with them now. They know they will never again meet someone in the same way they met you. Not because you were the only one capable of love, but because timing shapes experience. You met them before fear hardened into habit. You met them before avoidance became comfort. You met them when potential was still possible. And they missed it. That truth does not make them bitter. It makes them honest. They understand now that some people enter your life to stay, and some enter to teach. You did both. And that dual role is rare. This is why your absence still speaks. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But with weight. The kind of weight that changes behavior long after the moment has passed. What matters most now is not what they feel, but what you have become. You are no longer defined by heartbreak. You are defined by discernment. You no longer confuse intensity with depth. You no longer overextend to prove worth. You no longer settle for half clarity or half effort. You have learned the difference between connection and attachment. And that knowledge is irreversible. This is the version of you that life responds to differently. The version that attracts respect instead of confusion. The version that chooses alignment over longing. And this is why this message does not reopen wounds. It seals them. It confirms what you already knew deep down. You were not wrong. You were early. So let this be the quiet ending that brings no noise, no disruption, and no return to pain. The one who left you heartbroken carries a truth they cannot undo. You were real. You were rare. You were significant. And you were never meant to be diminished by someone else's unreadiness. This message does not ask you to look back. It asks you to stand firmly where you are now. Whole. Grounded. Aware. The story did not break you. It refined you. And that is the kind of ending that does not need another chapter to be complete.